treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.
Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson, and it's my pleasure to have with us tonight Mr. Buck Melton. Welcome, Buck.
Glad to be here.
We've had discussions about different issues, as you know, many of them involving the role of the Constitution as the protector of American citizens and the Bill of Rights, how important that is to our sense of welfare, and how that fares in a state of war, the difficulties that any nation has in prosecuting a war, and how the protection of individual liberty fares under those circumstances. So we've in our previous conversations, we've had discussions about how our present situations evolve, some of the issues that impact on that, and some of the I guess points of contention these days in the country is the suspicion that the government may be controlling the information that it receives in fighting this war for their own political best interest.
Oh no, it's for national security purposes. That's what they said.
Yes. Now I guess we're talking a little bit about Benghazi and talking points, and what we get into a little bit is information control. Is that a natural thing for a government to try and control information?
Oh, I think so. I mean, that's one reason why you've got freedom of the press listed in the First Amendment.
Yes.
That if you control the flow of information, if you control what people hear,
yes,
then you control the way they think and the way they vote. It's a no-brainer.
Now, it could be said that, I guess my point is that every government is going to try and put its spin on anything that happens. That's a natural thing that government does. Is that a fair statement?
I suppose so, and I think that it's become more pronounced as news sources have become more technologically advanced and viewers have become more sophisticated. So I'm not even sure when the word spin in that context was coined, but it was not too long ago.
Yes, maybe we should consult the Oxford English Dictionary. That would be a good thing to do. Well, the government tries to control information, particularly so in a state of war. We could discuss that, but certainly if you were in World War II, you were going to write some kind of big article saying we've lost the war, let's quit, or the Germans are the good guys, or the Nazis are great people, or whatever. The government would give you a nip, would they not?
Oh yes. The Alien and Sedition Acts are probably probably the best early example of that in our history. The Sedition Act of 1798. That essentially said if you denounce the president or you denounce Congress or say bad things about them, we're going to throw you in jail. It was interesting that they did not say you couldn't impugn the vice president, because Vice President Jefferson was of a different political party.
I see, yes.
So
yes,
very
yes,
obviously
yes,
partisan in
yes.
this circumstance.
So let's discuss that a little bit. So one of the great things is the idea of criticizing the government. I mean, that's part and parcel of our whole political structure, life as an American. I mean, everybody has the privilege of always complaining and ferreting out the rascals wherever they are, whether Republicans, Democrats, whoever they are. We want that right to persist. But can you do that? Can you effectively criticize the government if the government has control over the information and they're attempting to limit the public's access to what they're really up to? Is that a problem?
Well, you can certainly criticize it. As to being able to present a case based on evidence of what really happened, that's a different matter. If the government is the only agency that has the evidence and it's holding the evidence and claiming we can't give you this evidence because of national security reasons, it's for your own good, it's really hard to get around that. There is of course, Freedom of Information Act, which is designed to allow and even force the declassification of certain documents. But if there are claims of national security, then the FOIA requests will only go so far.
Well, maybe we could discuss some of the issues that the Benghazi episode brings before us. The idea is that this event took place, and the government is going to have to say what happens. And apparently, a process exists by which talking points are put there, and then all the people in the government sort of say, this is what we're supposed to say. Not just one person, but 25, 40, whatever.
Yes.
So the public imagines when they see a person on television or the media, this person has made an independent inquiry, and speaking as an independent observer, not being impacted by anything, but it appears that these talking points are universally being propagated, not only by the Democratic administration, but presumably by the Republican as well, and the government and the people are somewhat being misled anytime they hear a government official comment on anything. Is that a wrong thing to say?
Well, they certainly can be misled, depending on the motivation of whoever's talking and what information that they actually have. But how the administration has handled this Benghazi thing, for instance, if you just look at it, at first they were saying we don't have all of the information yet, it's too early to try to figure this out. And now here we are, 8 months later, they're saying, well, that's old news, we don't need to rehash that. So we're either too early or too late. But yeah, spin is a big problem.
Well, just to keep talking about this, I mean, it looks like the thing that comes out of this particular interchange that a neutral observer would say, I hope we are we neutral observers? I don't know, maybe we try to be. But the idea is that it looks like any kind of event that takes place, there's a process that heretofore most people are unaware of. That everybody gets together, 10, 20 people, everybody is sitting there, they're going to say, what should we say about this? And presumably anything that's taking place, stock market crashes, bombs going off, national crisis of any type, then everybody sits down and they come up with something to say, and presumably what's put in there is some kind of political protection for the governing party. Is that are they going to injure themselves?
You would assume that, yes. And once again, the idea of everyone getting together and getting on the same page, that in itself is not inherently bad. If the motivations for the shaping of the story and the way that it's shaped are purely or even largely to keep an administration in power, then it becomes dicey.
Now let me ask this question from a legal point of view. I believe you have some legal background. But isn't this something that trial lawyers seek out, or anybody that's a prosecutor, they're saying, what happened? I mean, how did the car accident take place? And on and well, did you group of people get together and you put your stories together? And they immediately discover that because a person attempting to get to the bottom of what occurs, they don't like the idea that everybody has come together to shape the story, because that way there's some kind of limit to exactly what's transpiring here. I mean,
well, perhaps. I mean, a good trial attorney can still find inconsistencies and problems. And also, if you've gotten this group of people together, is it to get input from different sources? Perhaps CIA has information that State Department didn't have, that Defense Department didn't have, and so it's getting all the information down there on the table so they can get the concrete or complete story. And then there's information flowing outward. The president says, here is the information we've got, here is our official story, and I'm telling you this is the story that you're going to repeat. And once again, I think the former is a reasonable thing to do, finding out what you know collectively, as opposed to let's get on the same page and stay there and don't let them shake us from our common story.
Now, let me ask this question. The government presumably, and particularly in a state of war, and I mean we'll say, well, an undeclared war, they often say this is an official secret. And I believe the Brits have the Official Secret Act, which is a real powerful thing that's more powerful than we have. But maybe I think there's a 1917 Espionage Act or some arcane piece of legislation. But the government puts a stamp on something, just sort of the James Bond kind of thing, stamp, top secret, official top secret. then what does that do with that information? And how do they do it? And could they abuse the privilege? And if you're a government employee and you let that information out, then
Yes.
presumably you could be prosecuted. And
Yes.
we'll talk, this is a current issue on that. Go ahead.
Yes, and that's the whole point for the Freedom of Information Act, is that it puts the ball in the court of the public, and usually the public is going to be in the form of the press, who can make requests to declassify certain materials. And it's a good way of making sure that the materials are in fact being classified for the right reasons, not for partisan reasons, not to shield the administration. So that serves a very important purpose. But, once again, it's got problems with it. If the president says, I'm not turning this loose, what can you do to force the president to turn it loose? Ultimately, worst case scenario, the president says, I'm not going to obey the law. One of the classic examples, Richard Nixon, does he have to turn the Watergate tapes over to the special prosecutor or to the House of Representatives or not? The special prosecutor, Leon Jaworski, took it all the way to the Supreme Court. He argued the case that these tapes are public record. They are not covered by any sort of classification. Nixon has to make them available. And Nixon replied, well, I will certainly abide by an authoritative decision of the Supreme Court. Well, what's an authoritative? Any decision of the Supreme Court's authoritative. Yeah, Nixon was probably saying, unless it's 9-0, I'm going to ignore them.
Yes.
Well, luckily it was 8-0 with Rehnquist abstaining.
Right.
But what can you do in that situation? Really, the ultimate restraint is the decision of all the parties involved to try to follow a rule of law, and you can't really force people to do that. It's got to be in there somewhere.
Well, I'm thinking about the recent conflict with a Fox News reporter, and the idea, as I understand it, once the press, or they're like the barbarians outside the fortress.
Yes.
They're trying to break into the fortress and get the information and
Yes.
show it. And then inside the fortress, the king's troops are there, and the king will hang you if you do something to let the barbarians in. But the barbarians have the right and the privilege and the duty to try and get that information. Is that the way things work? The freedom of the press means the press can find out top secret classified information. And once they have it, they've got the ability, or it's up to them as to what they want to do with it.
Yes.
And they'll be free to do that. Is that the way things
Yes,
play
we
out?
were talking last time about the FISA court, the
Yes.
Federal Foreign Intelligence, I really need to learn what that acronym means, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, and that there was a FISA court proceeding that resulted in a subpoena going to Verizon, and somehow the media outlet Guardian in England,
rather nice name,
got hold of that 4-page order and got it out onto its website today. And of course, once the Guardian got it on its website, all the other CNN, everyone else picked it up. That can't be put back in the bottle. I'm not aware of any sort of prosecution in the United States that can happen for that. The Pentagon Papers case, New York Times versus United States, 1971, 1972, said that, look, once it's out, it's out. Tough luck, government. And I think that's a good thing for democracy.
Was the New York Times prosecuted for that?
Nixon was actually trying to prevent the Times from publishing the papers. And the court said, if the First Amendment means anything, it means no prior restraint.
Yes.
No censorship. Now, as to whether or not it left the door open to a civil suit or prosecution after the fact, I would have to reread the case on that. But there was no prosecution of the Times after that case, as I recall.
So I guess what we're getting into right now is, and this is some of our national dialogue now, the idea that there was some kind of document involving North Korea, which is, everybody's a spooky place. I guess most people would say that. Pretty spooky guy runs it. It's just a real strange deal. is strange.
It's
But in any
very
event, very strange. But in any event, some kind of secret information the government had about North Korea, something, a national secret, and then the Fox reporter was attempting to get that national secret and then put it out on, presumably on television, and a scoop and get a lot of attention. He was allegedly suborning a government employee, and then the government then said, well, we want to investigate you, and they got a court order to say we're going to subpoena or whatever, we're going to get your records, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, with the idea that we may want to put you in prison.
Yes.
So that particular turn of events, how does that comport with, I guess, our understanding of freedom of the press and the idea about national secrets?
Well, as Sean Connery said, that's the Chicago way.
Oh, really?
Well, yes, that differs from what Richard Nixon did to Daniel Ellsberg,
Yes.
in that Nixon simply had his private security force attempt to intimidate Ellsberg without any color of law behind it.
Right.
Here, you're seeing the use of a legal process as a type of retaliatory measure, but it's a legitimate legal process. But the question is, why was it used against this particular reporter? Well, it's obviously used for intimidation purposes in order to chill his First Amendment right to free press and freedom of speech, and that kind of targeted use
Yes.
of investigatory power is it's a matter of concern.
Now, let's discuss the issuing of subpoenas. I mean, if the government is, let's suppose they're bad guys or whatever, and you mentioned earlier going judge shopping.
Yes.
So presumably you can just go to judge after judge after judge and say, I'd like to do this, or get a search warrant or whatever. And finally, after many times, you'll maybe find a sympathetic ear.
Yes.
And that can be done. But then in this particular case, the Attorney General said, well, what I told you, Judge, was actually, I was making it up. I had no intention of doing what I said I was going to do. I just wanted it for my own amusement or some other reason. What happens under those circumstances? Can the government just do anything it wants, say anything it wants, to suborn a judge to do something? And then what does the judge then say, wait a second, you told me this is not what you told me, therefore I'm going to inflict some kind of punishment on you. I mean, what happens under those circumstances? If you lie to the judge
especially if it's Holder, who is an officer of the court.
A huge officer of the court.
Yes. He would. I'm sure that the judge would be within his authority to find Holder in contempt of court and to begin disbarment proceedings against him. You'll remember what happened to Bill Clinton.
I don't think that interfered with his career much, did it? I mean, he was disbarred.
No, it didn't.
It probably didn't help him.
That's the thing. He was disbarred, but
yes, no big deal. Yes.
Yeah,
right.
it's sort of
almost a joke now, isn't it?
Well, it's I forget the name of the statute, but somebody who commits an axe murder and then writes a book about it and makes $15 million while sitting in jail.
Yes, yes.
So, but yes, you could. The contempt is the contempt has a bit more teeth in it because it could send someone to jail.
But the judge presumably has elected not to do anything about this. Now, when it seems to me what I'm seeing is the way the judicial system works is to get some kind of oversight about the individual judges. There needs to be an appeal of some type. If we have this rather unusual court that has this enormous power to I guess, tap phones or do whatever in secret and possibly do things worse. What kind, does the Supreme Court watch that? And what about, do the appellate courts watch judges that are arbitrarily giving, let's say, some really sinister prosecutor unbelievable leeway? I mean, what is the restraint exercised on the legal system, the judicial system, when the executive branch is abusing it?
Yes. Well, there are federal judicial conferences that tend to watch over courts administratively. But if there's a problem in a particular case, the adversarial system puts the great burden for the policing on the other party.
Yes.
That if I'm subpoenaed and I think that the judge is clearly in legal error by issuing the subpoena, then my recourse is, as the party who is being subpoenaed, to challenge that, to get my own counsel, if necessary, to appeal or certify the question to the appellate court over this judge and say, I've got a problem with this. So it's very much party driven.
Yes.
Which of course runs into a problem if this is a surreptitious or secret surveillance when you don't even know you're being surveilled.
Yes, yes.
Which is happening more and more under the Patriot Act.
Yes.
And that's a problem. I suppose that if you have a situation like that and then you are arrested on the basis of that surreptitious surveillance and you're convicted, or even during the trial, you can claim that there was some sort of Fourth Amendment problem, that the surveillance was not justified, the warrant did not have issue under probable cause and therefore should be excluded. But of course, by that time, you've racked up $1 million in attorney's fees.
Yes. Well, now, one of the things that is out there is that the Attorney General has been, I guess, held in contempt of Congress. There are all these issues out there.
Yes.
But it's extremely difficult to impeach a cabinet officer. Is that correct? Almost impossible. And the circumstances are very limited.
Almost impossible is too much, is too high a bar, and we have to keep in mind, of course, that impeachment. A lot of people misunderstand that.
It just brings the trial. I know.
Yes, there's the official charge, and then there's the trial. It's actually fairly easy to impeach. The real limitation, there are two real limitations on impeachment, on the bringing of the charge. Number one, does the party that feels aggrieved have a simple majority in Congress? And in this case, you have a Republican House of Representatives, which does the charging,
yes,
and a Democratic Attorney General.
Right.
So that's met. And in the second place, does the aggrieved party feel that it has enough political clout or won't suffer a political reverse
yes,
by doing that? And does it have another recourse? Right now, there are several investigations going on in the House, Ways and Means.
Yes.
So I don't think I've heard anybody mention the possibility of impeaching Eric Holder yet. They would much rather make it so warm that he will resign.
Right.
And he's been there long enough
that he may want to move on to more profitable pastures. Right?
Yes. But the problem there is in the Senate, which is still just barely Democratic controlled, and you need 2/3 there to convict.
Yeah, so in a way, I mean, I guess what we're seeing here is a great sausage factory in Washington.
Yes.
We're getting all this conflict, and it's rather good in a way that we have this divided government.
Yes.
I mean, in a time of war, divided government is pretty useful about watching these things.
Well, it is, and if you consider that the parties are farther apart now than they have been since the 1850s,
yes,
you need that control split.
Yes.
I never sleep so comfortably as when one party controls the House and the other party controls the Senate.
Yes, yes.
It makes things move very slowly,
yes,
but
yes,
no man's life, liberty, or property are safe when the legislature is in session.
It's interesting. Our system has such a division of power. We're a republic, a federal republic. We have the states that are also bastions of independence, and the counties and the cities, and numerous commissions. I mean, the whole, compared to say a country like France, I mean, we have such a division of power. I mean,
well, England is probably the better example. That I suppose, in theory, Parliament and specifically Commons has power all the way down to deciding if there's going to be a traffic light on a certain street corner somewhere in Yorkshire. And the restraint there, once again, is this sense of obligation to this great unwritten British Constitution.
Yes.
Here, it's divided up more. But of course, federalism has taken massive hits in the last 150 years. And that is a cause for concern. And now that you've got the imperial presidency coming in and Congress most of the time trying to shirk its duties because it's afraid it won't get reelected, the safeguards are not as strong as they were 150 years ago.
Yes. You know, it does seem, I mean, we have such important national problems that the political posturing is pretty impressive, isn't
Yes,
it? I mean,
yes.
people are, and maybe that's a problem about understanding complicated issues. We have the news cycle is so pertinent, and I was sort of getting into talking points, which I don't know. Did Jefferson have talking points? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they did. I mean, did people say we're all going to go out and say the same thing?
I doubt
and
it.
the idea is sort of a simplistic message.
Yes.
I mean, isn't that right? I mean, we could say there's attack on the IRS or whatever, and the idea is they show some people, I don't know, dancing and they're in their hot tub or whatever. Okay, well, that's maybe that's bad. It's certainly slightly amusing, and of course, everyone gets a certain what can I say? What's the word? Schadenfreude. I get that right?
Schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude,
Yes.
which is like the German word for joy of pain of others.
Yes.
But I mean, oh ho ho ho! Those tax guys are getting a big nip, and I'm tired of writing checks to them. But the important issues that are out there are we really having a conversation about that?
Not as much as we should, and I hang all that on Andrew Jackson. I think when common man democracy came in, the lowest common denominator, you don't have to be smart, you just have to vote, I think was a major problem there.
Yes.
Or as John Cotton, the great Puritan, said, and I think he said this around the 1640s, if the people are the governors, who are the governed? And that creates a problem. That ideally a Republican system, the electorate will be both interested and informed and
Yes,
intelligent
yes.
enough to understand.
Well, you know, I think it's a big problem because we depend so much on the media, and the media has its own kind of, I guess, sense of internal gravity and brevity of comment, and we often don't get a chance to tangle with the big story.
Yes, but that's why we need different perspectives from the media, and I think the emergence of Fox, like it or not, is a very healthy thing because you now, it's not as homogenized as it used to be. And the blogosphere is an even better example. It's the blogosphere that comes the closest to the situation with the nation's newspapers at the time the First Amendment was written. Highly partisan, many of them, and the idea is that you listen to a lot of different voices and then can form your own opinion. It's an adversarial system, if you will.
Well, on that note, Bucky, thank you so much for being here. We'll have to
Thank
have
you.
you back again to continue our spirited conversation.
Indeed.
Thank you. Thank you.
This program is